What is going on, everybody? I hope you're having a great day. Lukas Klotz from Crunch Time Sports, and today we are breaking down one of my favorite players from the Detroit Lions draft class. And you may be asking who that is, even though you probably clicked on the YouTube video and saw exactly who I'm talking about. But just for the purpose of this video, Dan Jackson, the safety out of Georgia. The Detroit Lions took him in the 7th round, 230th overall. And again, Dan Jackson, if you don't know who he is, that's exactly what today's video is about. We are going to be breaking down Dan Jackson, who he is as a prospect coming out of Georgia, and what he can be for the Detroit Lions year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and then possibly if they're going to extend him. But that's a very far way down the road. Let's talk about right now. Who is Dan Jackson? He's 6'1", 195 pounds, ran a 4.40 at his pro day, was not invited to the combine. He was snubbed from the combine. The Georgia fans had something to say about that. You're going to see why after we turn on the tape here in a second. But a little bit undersized. But if you can say one thing about Dan Jackson, in my opinion, the most intriguing thing about him, he just flies around the field flat out. He's just a fucking football player. He's somebody that you line up at the safety spot and say, go hit somebody. And Dan Jackson does whatever he can, launches his body, does whatever it takes. A very, very hard hitter, but he's also an amazing special teams player. Like Dave Phipp cannot wait to be able to coach Dan Jackson this year. I think when you look at him and Sione Vaki, those two rookies that were safeties coming out of college, Sione Vaki, I understand he's a running back, played safety at Utah, was a very good safety at Utah. He's got some heavy hitters on that special teams unit. He just got gifted another one. But when you talk about it, safety, what was Dan Jackson? Okay, he walked on at Georgia. He looked at Kirby Smart, said, hey, you know what? You didn't give me an offer, even though it was an all-state safety, and I want to walk onto that defense. 2019, they didn't have those back-to-back national championships yet, but he could say, I see you're building something special, Kirby, and I want a part of it. I'm going to walk on. And then in 2021 and 2022, when they won national championships, guess who was on that defense? Starting for that defense in some games. Dan Jackson. In 2021, he had 4 starts and made some very meaningful contributions to that team during that year. 2022 didn't start as much, only 1 start, but again, was in that safety rotation. Think about the safeties they put out over the last couple of years, defensive backs in general. Malachi Starks this year, you can keep going down the line. We know how good those Georgia defenses have been, and Dan Jackson walked on and said, I'm going to play here. And then in 2024, finally got his time to be a full-time starter, and he showed out for that defense as far as what they expected out of him when they walked on. Till that point, probably just blew all their expectations. He had 64 tackles, 3 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and he was just laying people out left and right. And it wasn't when they were playing Washington State Tech University. It was when they were playing Texas, when they were playing these SEC games. Dan Jackson was making a difference. And this is exactly why. If you want to say, well, why did the Lions take him? Let's roll the tape, guys. Dan Jackson film, guys. Okay, he's easy to spot out for Georgia defense. He sticks out like a sore thumb. He's laying the boom, tackling guys, coming up from the secondary, up to the line of scrimmage, and making contact. And this is going to be good film and bad film, but my Lord, that's an emergency run. But you're going to see he's a very aggressive safety, okay? And sometimes that runs him into trouble because he's very aggressive making his angles, and sometimes they're poor angles. He's missing in the open field, and if you're at that safety, you're that last line of defense. It leads to big plays. But this is something where, again, you're in a safety room with Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. If you're a 7th-round pick in Dan Jackson, you are not starting anytime soon, unless it's due to injury, and we hope that does not happen. But I think if you look at Dan Jackson, 7th-round pick out of Georgia, and you look at who the 3rd-string safety was for the Detroit Lions this year before he got arrested, that was Brandon Joseph. He was an undrafted guy, played at Notre Dame, played at Northwestern, but he slowly made a name for himself. They don't have Brandon Joseph anymore. They don't have Ife Melifonwu. They signed Avonte Maddox, who can play from safety out of Philadelphia, but he's mainly a nickel guy, but he'll play some safety. Dan Jackson has a way to play to be a safety 3 in this defense. I don't know if it's going to be right away, but when you watch the film, I mean, look how deep he is right here, and he just comes up and makes a play very effortlessly. Very effortlessly. He's a very smart, aware football player. He always finds a way to be around the ball, and he just plays fearlessly. They took Ahmad Hassanin out of Boise State, and the quote was from Brad Holmes that he just plays with his hair is on fire. And you can see the same thing about Dan Jackson. Like I said, year 1, I think simply going to be, again, too aggressive there, needs to make a better tackle. But year 1, he's going to be a special teams weapon. And when you look at, okay, again, that safety depth, you can talk about if he earns that safety 3 spot behind Brian Branch, behind Kirby Joseph, he's much smaller than Ife Melifonwu. Trust me, 6'1", 195 compared to Ife Melifonwu, who is about 6'3", weighed a little bit more than that, obviously. But he plays a lot like him. If he was a corner coming out of Syracuse and they moved him to safety, but you could just see if he was a hard hitter, he wanted to come up and make contact, and he was better against the pass. I will say that. If he definitely better against the pass, Dan Jackson has to improve there. He's not terrible against in coverage. Like, he had 2 interceptions in the SEC. That's good production, especially over your first year truly starting. So he has the speed to get there. He's a little undersized compared to some of the wide receivers, but he's going to be okay in coverage with a couple years of development in the system. Dan Jackson, I think, guys, I truly do, will be a very good depth piece for this team. I don't think this is going to be an Antoine Green where it's like, oh, he's hanging around the wide receiver room for a couple years and then you're going to cut him. No, Dan Jackson, he walked on at Georgia, ended up starting at that Georgia defense, walked on and started. You're essentially getting handed the same form in the NFL when you're saying, hey, 7th round pick, Detroit Lions defense, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Terrion Arnold. Like, if you look at this DJ Reed, the secondary is loaded. And he's got to try to make a name for himself in there. And I think he's just going to do whatever it takes day in and day out to do exactly that. When they talk about him at Georgia, they said he was just a football player, guys. He comes in every day ready to work. He tries to get better every day. And that's something that Brad Holmes, the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, this whole coaching staff, I don't know why I said it like that. This whole coaching staff is going to be able to just mold into a good football player. He has the mindset to do that. Like, if you watch him on the field, like I said, he can read plays very well. It's just there's a few things that need to be tuned up until he could be a solid depth piece at the safety spot for the Detroit Lions. So I'm excited about this pick in the 7th round. I think it was a little bit of a steal. I think you're not going up there to say that's great value. You're getting a starting safety in the 7th round. No, but if you looked at Brandon Joseph last year, he wasn't somebody that you're like, oh, I'm comfortable with him starting. But if he came off the bench and was playing for you in a little bit of a rotational role, you're comfortable. So I think Dan Jackson, by the end of year 1, year 2, you're getting that exact same thing. There's better safeties in this draft. I'm not saying that Dan Jackson was an elite safety in this draft, but how he's going to fit in this defense, how they like to run their defense, Kelvin Shepard's going to be playing a very physical style of ball. Dan Jackson's going to be able to emulate that. So I like this pick a lot. Watch out for Dan Jackson in training camp. Watch out for special teams this year. He's going to be smacking people. And you don't know. Maybe he's out there on this defense making some plays at the line of scrimmage. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, FisherCTSports.com.